Rendering wood. So I see a lot of pretty weak videos on YouTube, mainly from interior designers. The technique is terrible, the objects are lit incorrectly, and the results really don't look so good. So let's take a look at how you want to approach rendering an organic material like a piece of wood. My name is Eric Strebel. I'm an industrial designer. Welcome to my channel about product design and making. I hope that you like, enjoy, and become a subscriber. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up, and then you hit the bell again, so you get the little parentheses around it. That way you'll be notified every time I have a new video. Don't forget to check out the design and making merch just below the video. All kinds of stuff, t-shirts, hoodies, and other miscellaneous fun things you might like. All right, so for demonstration purposes, we're just going to draw a simple board or a plank in perspective, no less, 3-point perspective. So converging vanishing points off the page. If you don't know what that is, check out some of the other videos that I have about perspective, and there's tons of them on YouTube as well. So the key to drawing wood is trying to capture its specific irregularities or organic nature. And different woods are different, so different species have different types of wood grain. So in this case, we're doing a standard piece of pine, and you saw me holding a piece of wood as reference earlier in the video here just a few moments ago, and that's a really good thing to have as reference. So I'm drawing in pretty light. I realize it's kind of tough to see, but it'll all get markered in shortly. The thing that I do first is I lay in the basic look or graphic of that wood on the top surface. Now, wood has grain, and it runs throughout the entire piece of wood. So where that grain ends on the end, which is end grain, is what I'm drawing in right now. That connects to the top surface. And it also is visible on the side. So where that end grain ends on the side of the piece of wood, I carry those end grain lines through. And I'm doing things very organically, very wavy to pull off that feeling of a piece of wood. So I'm going to switch from the Prismacolor pencil that I was using to sketch everything in with to a marker. I'm using a Prismacolor marker here, probably a 30% gray. And I'm putting in the shadow. The direction of the shadow in an object when you're rendering for industrial design, interior design, whatever, the shadow goes away from the user because the objects are lit from the front. So the shadows go towards the back of the object. Objects are not backlit. Objects are front lit so we can see what they look like. That is the purpose of doing a rendering. So you can see the detail and the information that you wish to convey and tell somebody else. Pretty basic, but I see a lot of people mess this up with shadows going towards the viewer. It's just wrong. Anyway, so simple shadow that I'm laying in here, and this helps me frame out my piece of wood as well with a little bit of dark gray in the back there just to help it pop off the page. And I spend a fair amount of time putting in my shadow correctly. If you don't know how to calculate shadows, I have videos about that as well, and there's tons of them on YouTube too. So make sure you find some that show shadows going away from the object, away from the user, not towards the user. Here what I'm doing is I am picking out the best colors that I have available at this time when I'm doing the rendering, and I have a bunch of different Sharpies here as well as some other Prismacolor markers. I'm going to start first by laying in the top value of this wood. It's going to be the lightest value because the light is coming over my right shoulder from the top down, and that's how it's lighting this object. Standard procedure for lighting a product over your shoulder, top down. The top surface is usually the lightest, gives you that 1, 2, 3 read. That front-facing surface was a little bit darker, and then this end surface, which is in shadow, is the darkest of all. And I'm using a rather dark or a burnt orange, burnt umber maybe. I'll post it here right below the video. It's a little bit orange, and I end up kind of graying it out with some other markers. That's a mineral orange on the end there. It's a little bit orange. So let's go back to the top surface here. The top surface originally had a marker color called buff, so it's pretty light. And this marker that I'm using here is sand. It's the same color I used on the front face of the plank of wood. And I'm being super light, pretty organic. I'm just going with the flow here. There's no sort of set thing, but I am following the original wood grain that I penciled in with the pencil earlier as my guide, and I'm just sort of laying that in very lightly, organically, just to go get some flow. So here I'm coming back with this mineral orange, which is the color that I used on the end grain to put in the grain that's visible on that right side. And then I come back with my sand just to soften things up, and that makes the markers kind of bleed together because that mineral orange is just a little bit too harsh for me. And I'm also going to pop in this sand color on the end to kind of dull out some of the orange, and that works pretty effective. Then I use my Sharpie, which is a little bit darker than that end grain color there, to get my end grain. And I come back again here, probably with the sand, to blend everything together, to get it to all work. And it really starts to sing here. So I go back, I look at my sample piece of wood, and let's get out a brown Prismacolor. And this is going to get us a little bit more contrast in the wood grain here. And I'm doing this along the outside edge, and I'm laying the pencil down relatively flat because I want this to fade, to go from dark to light in the wood grain, very much the way wood grain is on a piece of pine. I'm being relatively meticulous here because I am trying to simulate a specific type of wood. And it doesn't matter what kind of wood that you have, a sample is going to be a great reference for you. So here I have a little knot, again, just pulling in the details. I'm not pressing very hard. Again, just very lightly, you know, just coming in, being real organic, kind of loose, just the way wood is. And this is when it's going to give you the authenticity and be able to pull off the look and feel of a piece of wood. Now I switch how I hold the pencil in my hand, and it's very flat on the page, and I'm adding in some more texture and randomness into the wood, and I'm actually using the texture of the paper to pick up a little bit of that organic nature and feel that you would get in a piece of wood, and I'm using the pencil to help me get that. We're going to outline a little bit of the back of the piece of wood just to give it a little bit of punch, a little contrast, so it reads better on the page very lightly. You can always work it up from light to dark, because if you go too dark, you're going to kind of mess things up and you have to erase things, so better to do light, several strokes. And here I'm just using the edge of a sketchbook, because I don't have a ruler with me at the moment, to just sort of add a little bit of punch and kind of outline things. Very much rendering for product design or interior design is about line weight to make things kind of pop. We're not doing super photorealistic things where there is no line weight. And a little bit in the back here, again, just to give the material some form and some definition. All right, so it's looking pretty good at this point, but we're going to add a little bit more contrast so it reads a little bit better on the page, attracts the viewer to the image. Ultimately, that's what you want. So we'll just come back, darken things up, and you can do that when you work light to dark. If you go in, are too heavy with your pencil or your markers, you're going to have a tough time. Things are going to get too dark, too muddy, and you're going to get out of control. So always work light to dark. Build up those layers a little bit at a time. So this is really just going to give us a nice, happy piece of wood. You know, it's just laying there on the table all by itself. I think Bob Ross would really approve. All right. We're really just adding contrast to the image at this point, pulling out the details so it really reads as a piece of wood. Maybe it's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but it is a rendering. You're trying to tell a story ultimately, and you want to drive that point home that it's wood, and it's very recognizable as a specific species of wood. Just take your time, have fun, practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon in the bottom right of the video or below the video. Give it a thumbs up and follow the channel there as well. You want to know about upcoming design content and projects that I'm working on? Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and my favorite Google+, links below. Rock on. Click here to check out some of the other design and making videos that I have that you might enjoy.